Monday, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. That's right, he said it's the free Odyssey app. You can also stream us on YouTube. That's also free at the Team 980. An hour from right now, David Aldridge, the Hall of Famer, will be on with us talking NBA Finals. But you can probably guess where we're going to start the show. And you can probably guess that I'm rather annoyed. Anthony, how was your weekend? First, just a proper hello. I don't want to be rude.
Well, hello to you too, Craig.
How was your weekend?
My weekend was okay. I played a lot of flag football. We ended up losing in overtime.
Hate that for you.
Yeah, but it was all right.
All right, that's good. Mine was all right too. Mine was solid. Okay, now that we've said hello. The Caitlin Clark Olympic thing is something that could actually be an interesting topic. But as usual, people who don't know what they're talking about or just choose to treat women's sports like a charity project, not like sports, are ruining it. Because, believe it or not, I would bet that if most people who are longtime listeners of the show, or even listeners of the show in the last 3 weeks, they're like, I know what Craig's take's going to be. He's going to tell everyone who wants Clark to be on the Olympic team to shut up and they don't watch enough, blah, 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 and whatever. And that is not true. Because I actually think that there is an argument for Caitlin Clark being on the Olympic team. There's an argument for, and there's an argument against. And they're actually pretty clean arguments. The word marketing has nothing to do with the argument. And I'm going to start there because I just think I'll be better for the rest of the segment if I get this off my chest. This is the Olympic Games. Athletes across the world work their entire lives for this moment. The Olympic Games are about the height and pinnacle of international competition. The Olympics are not a marketing ploy. The Olympics are not designed to be a way to grow sport A or sport B because thing X or thing Y happens. Sometimes it happens naturally. The 1992 Olympics are one of the most important inflection points in the history of basketball. Michael Jordan at those games, along with Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and that dream team, which does bring some interesting points in this argument, or this conversation about Clark, that is kind of the jumping off point of the global game. The rest of the world in 1992 got to see just how good NBA players were up close. Also, there were a couple of guys on some other teams that played all right and all of a sudden found themselves in the NBA. And then all of a sudden there were young kids like Dirk Nowitzki watching from Germany who was like, this is cool. I'm 7 feet tall. I'm going to be soon. And we know how that turned out. So, like, international competition, and specifically the Olympic Games, can be massive for a sport. Even one as popular as the NBA was in the early 90s, coming off of the decade in the 80s where Magic and Bird had grown the game tremendously in the United States. So, that's not to say that it can't happen. But if it happens and it sticks, it's going to be because it happens organically. Michael Jordan's the most important person on the 92 roster. There's the famous picture/video of him looking at the 100-foot tall banner or however tall it was, of himself that Nike put up in Barcelona. Michael Jordan at that time, in 1992, was fresh off his first championship and was at the absolute peak of his powers. There is arguably no better version of Michael Jordan, of which there were tremendous versions from the late 80s all the way through till he retired in 1998. Even the Wizards version averaged 20 points a game. But there is arguably no better version of Michael Jordan than the player he was in 91-92, where the 92 Olympics are the dead center of that. Athletically, he was still young Michael, flew through the air, all of that. He had started to add a little bit of muscle mass, so his strength was more. Obviously, he did that in part in response to the Jordan rules in the late 80s with the Pistons. And he had also been playing professionally for that point almost a decade, 8 years. He was drafted in 84. And obviously, he was a 3-year college player under Dean Smith at North Carolina. So it's not like he was a 19-year-old coming into the league. So he had enough basketball knowledge that mentally he was as good as he was going to be, basically. And physically, he was still as good as he ever was. And that intersection of intellect, strength, and speed / explosiveness, vertical jump, etc., met the best version of Michael Jordan. That's why the game grew. And so if you want to talk about giving Caitlin Clark a spot because, oh, she could be what Michael Jordan did in 92, you're just wrong. Like, Caitlin Clark wouldn't start on this team. She would barely play. Which also could be fine. I'll get to that in a moment. But the idea that you'd insult the Olympic Games by using it as a marketing tool is exactly that. It's insulting. And on a bigger level, we never do that again in any other sport. Could you make an argument that women's basketball is a little bit different because the U.S. is so thoroughly dominant in a way that they aren't in almost any country isn't in any other sport? Because it's the combination of not just being an individual, but a team, and the length ahead that USA basketball still is on the women's side, where clearly it's not on the men's side anymore. But on the women's side, you can so take for granted that they're going to win that you could do this if you wanted to. I guess, but I don't think the Olympic Games has to be that. And I would simply say this, not like, does USA Basketball as an organization have a responsibility to grow the game? Yes, USA Basketball has a responsibility to grow basketball. That is part of their mission statement. Is the sport of women's basketball in a really interesting spot right now where maximizing growth is a part of the goal of the people running the game? Yeah, I think that's fair. However, not every single thing that touches women's basketball has to be a marketing ploy. Some of it has to be the actual game. And the Olympic Games absolutely fall into that. If in any other sport, and especially in any men's sport, you said, let the marketing people pick the team, you would, if you're saying that about women's basketball, you'd hate someone saying that about men's insert sport here. So why is it okay? The answer is, it's not. It's not. Now, with all of that said, here on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, we're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. There is an argument for Caitlin Clark being on this team. The argument's not the Christian Laettner argument, because the Laettner thing has gotten twisted 30 plus years later. Laettner was included on the 92 Dream Team because there was basically a negotiation between USA Basketball and the NBA and the colleges and everything that said, like, in order for NBA participation to happen, there's got to be a college player on. And Laettner was the best college player, so he got to be on the team. People hated it. So if it was a mistake then, it'd be a mistake now. That said, in 2012, USA Basketball decided this Anthony Davis kid's really good. And we think it's worthwhile to bring him along with LeBron and Kobe and Jay Kidd and Dwayne Wade and Carmelo Anthony and Dwight Howard and all these dudes, because it'll be a great learning experience for him, and we know he's going to be a part of our program in the future. And if you want to make that argument for Caitlin Clark, I'll listen. Because this USA Basketball team, while it has, I'm going to say, like 10 of the best players in the world, and then a couple of others that, based off who they've been in the past, both from a leadership resume standpoint, in Diana Taurasi, we're like, you be the one to tell Diana Taurasi she's not making the Olympic team. You better duck when you do it. She deserves to be there in the same way that Jason Kidd deserved to be there in 2012. It's not because she is one of the best players. She's still really good. She's still averaging actually basically the same scoring average as Clark. She's averaging 16 a game. She's hit big shots this year. And from a leadership and an experience and a know-how standpoint, she's unmatched. She brings a thing that no one else can bring to the team. So she deserves a spot at the end of the bench where she's not going to play a lot, and that's fine. And then Brittany Griner, who is working her way back after what happened to her getting taken as a political prisoner. She's continued to come back, play really well. She is an incredibly unique talent and has been an essential part of multiple USA Basketball gold medals and has earned her spot from career achievement. The only other player that you could really argue about is Chelsea Gray, who is the best point guard in the world, but coming off of a foot injury, which we're not sure how she looks yet. And by the way, if she's like, I'm not right, she could still pull out of this, and maybe Clark, or maybe the actual most deserving next up, Enrique Agumbawale from the Dallas Wings, who's averaging 26 a game this year, would get that spot. But no one on this team, not even some of the younger players like a Sabrina Ionescu, is under the age of 26, which means, and I'm not great at math, but if you add 4, that means there's going to be no one under the age of 30 that has any Olympic experience in 2028. And while I think it's really tough to say, like, oh, that person belongs off the team, maybe Gray, because you have so much guard depth. I mean, even her 2 Las Vegas Aces teammates. The Aces have 4 players of the 12, which is nuts. But Jackie Young and Kelsey Plum, deservedly on the team, you say, like, we got enough point guard depth. We're going to be just fine. Sorry, Chelsea, you've won gold medals before. But because you've been out, it's really hard to put you on this team. And we need to get a young player on it. And so we're going to choose Caitlin Clark because of the younger players, of the sub-25s, she's certainly got the best case. Based off what she did in college, where you think she'll be 4 years from now, and her skill set, whatever. If you want to make that argument, that you should always have an old head and you should always have someone that can be a leader in the future and is going to be a part of your program in the future, that is a perfectly legitimate long-term health, long-term planning basketball argument for putting Caitlin Clark on the Olympic team. But if any of your argument includes the word marketing, you've come to the wrong place. This is the Olympic Games. This is not the WNBA All-Star Game, where absolutely the WNBA should put their thumb on the scales. And they do. It's called fan voting. There's a reason why fan voting exists for the exhibition event that is designed to bring fans into the game. This is not an exhibition. This is the Olympic Games. Treat the Olympic Games like the Olympic Games. USA Basketball has. A lot of people who comment on sports seem to forget what the Olympic Games are. Talk about this more with you next. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Take your calls, and I'll tell you why. There's actually a Tiger Woods parallel to what we're talking about right now with Caitlin Clark. I'll explain as we go. Here, hour 1 of the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Taking your calls at 301-230-0980. That's 301-230-0980. We are talking about what has become the biggest sports talk topic of the day, which is that Caitlin Clark has been left off the USA Olympic team, which is interesting, and I think legitimately interesting in some ways, not necessarily the ways in which it is being discussed, though. Let's go. Anthony, we go into the phones yet? Or okay. Let's go to Little. Little, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
What's up, Hall?
What's
I
up,
was
Little?
asking you, man, Anthony, a top producer in the nation. In DC.
Obviously.
Hey, that's my man, Anthony. Hey, look, Connecticut coach had a lot to do with that girl not making it, man. I'm going to tell you, I don't know why ESPN ain't putting it out there, man. That's a biased coach, man. When that girl lady on Connecticut, I bet you he got that guard from Connecticut on the USA team. I bet you. That guard, I don't think she came out this year. I'm not sure. I could be wrong, but I'm
Yeah,
almost
Little,
sure,
you're very wrong.
Hall.
Like, what's the point of your call? Saying Gino Auriemma
Hall.
didn't get Caitlin Clark on the team, but Paige Beckers
Man, he got
is
a
when she's
whole-
not on the team?
Ain't he with some kind of Olympic committee or something? Ain't he a coach of the Olympic team? or
He
some kind
used
of
to
committee
be,
of
but
the
not
Olympic team?
anymore.
Oh, hey, he had a lot to do with it. I'm telling you now. I don't know why they ain't bringing it out.
With what evidence?
Man,
Little,
that-
humor me.
That girl I ain't got no evidence, but I got
Oh.
scuttlebutt. I got
Oh.
scuttlebutt. It's scuttlebutt, Hall.
A scuttlebutt from where? Oh, no. You went from saying no evidence to saying a scuttlebutt. Which one is it?
I got some scuttlebutt, but look, the ESPN don't want to say it. Man, that girl put a whooping on Connecticut, man. That man holding her back, man. He biased coach. All right, man. I'm about it, Paul. I'll put it all together. Then you think about it and put it in the bag and shake it up. You realize why that girl ain't on the team, man.
She's not on the team because she's not one of the best 12 players in the pool. She might not be one of the best 15. Caitlin Clark's an incredible basketball player. She came into the hardest league in the world and is probably one of the best 20 players in the league already. She also leads the league in turnovers. She struggles with physical play. Have you all ever watched international basketball? Dog. If you think the WNBA is physical, wait till you get to see FIBA refs. They will let you punch somebody, sometimes literally. Man, I thought it couldn't get worse than the marketing stuff. Gino Auriemma's holding a grudge, and he made sure. Despite the fact, the last time Gino Auriemma spoke publicly about Caitlin Clark, it was on the Dan Patrick Show last week. Nothing but great things to say, and was pretty ticked off at non-women's basketball fans who are watching now, which is great, but don't actually know anything about the WNBA, that have basically, in the mainstream media, if you will, set her up to fail. Because they expected her to do something that was not possible, which is come into the WNBA and dominate. Which, by the way, it's worth mentioning. One of the best takes on this comes from Caitlin Clark herself. This is one of the reasons I get so irritated with so many people trying to speak for Caitlin Clark, is Caitlin Clark's very good at speaking for herself. You want to know who didn't anticipate making the Olympic team? Caitlin Clark. And this is an important point to kind of throw into the mixer here. Unlike a lot of people who I'm thrilled that for a sport that I've loved for a long time, more people are enjoying it now. That's good. I love that. Long term, excellent, big fan, awesome, and welcome. Like I've actually genuinely tried, whether it's on Twitter, on YouTube, whenever I'm interacting with folks who are new to the sport, even if they say something that I would be like, that's an ignorant comment. Like, not being a misogynist, not being a sexist, not being racist, not any of the isms, right? But like, just from like a basketball standpoint, ignorant, like, yeah, tell me you've watched 3 WNBA games in your life without telling me kind of stuff. I try to go like, hey, well, welcome. I'm not going to try to push you away. I'm going to be like, hey, this is a cool community. Welcome in. Take a look around. You might find something you like besides Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark was the door by which you found it. That's fine. But Caitlin Clark's been in this community / more importantly, like she exists as a women's basketball player in women's basketball. Caitlin Clark knew how hard the WNBA was going to be, even if millions of her fans did not. And that's okay. And it's not just okay, it's like fantastic. Because that's why Caitlin Clark was one of the people who was not surprised that Caitlin Clark did not make the Olympic team. Which, despite all of the talking around her, she exists in that world. Her world is actually based in reality. Which, the reality is, on basketball merits, she doesn't belong on the team. Let's go to Big Tony. Big Tony, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
What's going on, Big Craig?
What's up, fella?
Good, man. Let me tell you something. No, I'm good. Let me tell you something. I ain't a racist, nothing like that. I'm married to all kinds of racial. I got a white family, Indian family, this, that, and other. So I'm going to put it right here. And everybody know that. Caitlin, she's not one of the best 12 players in the league. I understand that. She will be once she get a little bit of muscle, but she was a little girl coming to a grown woman's league. God damn. Oh, my fault. And her being off the Olympic team, like they said, she was not there for the tryouts, this, that, and other. I understand because she was still doing the Final Four, this, that, and other. But, I mean, she's going to be there. Get a little bit more muscle. Craig, you might need to go put her on your protein program. Get a little bit more muscle on her.
Well, the funny thing, Tony, appreciate the call. Like, Caitlin actually talked about, if you listen to the extended comments she had before the Fever game the other day, like, or the Fever's shoot around the other day when she was asked about this, Caitlin said, like, I'm kind of looking forward to this time off, in part because I know I need to get in the weight room. Like, in season is not a time. I will put my strength coach hat on for a second. In season is not a time to build muscle. Building muscle hurts. Actually, Anthony, you're on some kind of bulk and shred program right now.
Yep.
How sore is your body?
It's very sore. I actually shouldn't have worked out today, but it's sore.
Like, playing your flag football tournament this weekend probably sucked. You probably felt slow. Not if you could do both at once. Or, like, if you could pick one or the other as opposed to doing both at once, that's how you do it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Caitlin's rookie season is about making the current version of Caitlin Clark work in the WNBA best she can. And then, honestly, like, I mean, shoot, if she wants to pay me to train her, I would take Caitlin Clark's money because she has a lot of it. That State Farm money, come on, send it my way. But realistically, if I was her, what I would do is I would call Steph's guy in Charlotte. I would call, and I'm forgetting his name, but I think it's Brandon something. I call up Brandon, or what his actual name is, and I'd say, hey, bro, that thing you did with Steph a couple years ago when he hurt his wrist and you guys did a lot of weightlifting and then all of a sudden he came back and was the best player in the world again. Can we do that? That's what I would do if I was Caitlin Clark in the offseason. And I would take a couple of weeks during that Olympic break to try to build a little bit of muscle. There's only so much you can do in a couple of weeks. Really, honestly, the thing, since she's been playing since last October with a small respite between the Final Four and training camp, is I would rest. I would let my body heal. And she's genuinely looking forward to that. Unless, Chelsea Gray's foot's not right, and all of a sudden she's named as a replacement, which is still possible. But as of right now, if you want to make an argument that they need younger players that eventually are going to be there and have experience, if you want to give her the traditional Anthony or the Anthony Davis spot, fine. Other than that, there's just not a basketball argument for her to be on the team. I still need to explain to you the Tiger Woods parallel. We'll get to that as well as more of your calls next. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. 30 minutes away from Basketball Hall of Famer David Aldridge, one of the all-time legends, writing about the game, talking about it with us. NBA Finals 2-0 Celtics. We'll get there at 5 p.m. for Not My Beat. The other top story today, though, the conversation around Caitlin Clark not making the Olympic team. And I do want to go, there's two directions I want to go with this after we take a few more calls at 301-230-0981. I would like to have yet another conversation about the conversation, which seems to be a lot of our conversations these days. Cool. Secondly, there is a parallel. If I'm going to take some of the arguments I don't like on their face and like, okay, fine, let's talk about the marketing. There is a parallel to Tiger Woods that I would like to draw your attention to with Caitlin Clark that we'll get to in just a moment. But first, more of your phone calls, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. I got distracted because the mouse freaked out, and all of a sudden I was staring. This is a true story, Anthony. On the call screener computer, I guess it's logged in as Essig right now, and there's a picture. I'm gonna do the old. Let me move the camera here, of Chris Russell spilling his nachos on my seat in the press box before I got there during Commander season this year.
Oh, because you're not logged in. Oh, that's why that's up there. Okay.
Yeah. Or Essig somehow got on my login and I've never changed his photo, but I'm pretty sure this just stays in as Essig. And yeah.
Nice.
That's
good old Rooster.
Yeah, that's not great. Anyway, 301-230-0980 is the phone number, and OG Ricardo is there. Ricardo, what's up, dude? Thanks for calling in. Thanks for holding through the break. What you got for us on this Clark discussion?
Man, no problem. Thanks for taking my call. You and the super producer. So, Craig, you my progressive warrior. You my man. No question about it. I'm in full agreement with you that this Olympic, Caitlin Clark not being on the Olympics, it shouldn't be about marketing. This is the Olympic Games. I told Anthony earlier, Ian, I think his name. He's just a regular caller. I think he calls in the Sheehan Show a lot. Very smart guy. He said it. I mean, the Olympics is a nonprofit here, man. I mean, when the Olympics is over, of course, Caitlin is bringing the money to the WM.
Oh no, Ricardo's phone died on us. I was staring at the call thing, listening to Ricardo talk, and then all of a sudden he disappeared. I didn't touch a thing. That sucks. Yeah, the Olympics are nonprofit. I don't think that designation necessarily has to be the thing. Like the Olympics are nonprofit, even though they generate billions of dollars in sponsorships and media rights and stuff. It's one of these nonprofits. It's like, okay. But I do think the point of the Olympics is international competition at the highest level. The point of the Olympics is not marketing. Will some of these sports certainly try to market themselves? Sure. But if the USA was like, we're pretty sure we can win the 4x4, let's take some super popular runner who's not actually quite as good. Like, she's a professional, and maybe she's the 5th best runner that we have on the women's side or the men's side. Make it a dude, right? Instead of taking the 2 fastest 400-meter runners, we're going to take the 5th fastest dude because he's more popular. And we know that Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone is going to run fast enough to make up the time, and we're going to still win the gold medal. You'd be like, hell no, don't do that. Put the fastest team out there. Let's challenge a world record. We're America, damn it. We want to dominate. What happened to that? And that's kind of the funniest thing about this is so many of the people that are making this marketing argument are the fact that they are the ones making the argument. If you know, you know. I'll let you connect the dots. I don't want to get too far down this rabbit hole because I realize as I'm staring over the cliff that I could get myself in a lot of trouble here. I will merely say this. You would not accept this in any other circumstance. Period. Let's go to Daniel in Richmond. Daniel, thanks for calling. You're on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig. Appreciate you taking my call.
You got it.
Yeah. I was just earlier today. I was listening to the first takes point about this, and Stephen A. making the whole marketing aspect of it. I was so dead toned to it at first. I was just like, man, I don't even want. It's the Olympics. Like they don't like USA team. They don't care about the marketing aspect of how this is going to affect the league. Like I could see, after listening to them, I could see in a way, yes, that it could benefit the game. It could benefit the WNBA as a whole, getting more ticket sales for her jersey and all that. But the point of the Olympics is to put your best team out on the floor and to compete overseas. Like, I didn't really care about this until this got on my feed this morning. So it's just so crazy of just how people are clamoring for Caitlin just based on the marketing aspect. So she's performing well. She's getting better. She just scored 30 on the Mystics, the winless Mystics. But yeah, like I just don't like. I'm deaf toned to the whole marketing side now. I'm with the whole, USA team is gonna build the best team to put the best women on the floor to go compete. Like,
For
what
sure.
are we doing?
Right.
What are we doing?
Like, it's so simple. Hey, Daniel, here's what we should do. We should put the best team out there and go crush people. Like, yeah, sign me up. Go America. Go USA. Like, it's just not that complicated. Appreciate the call. And actually, I will say this. There is a history in women's basketball with Team USA of doing intense marketing for the game. That history was captured magically by friend of the show, Kristen Lapis, who also produced the Giannis documentary that's on Amazon, A Marvelous Journey. She also produced, we had her on the show to talk about actually the documentary she did on Caitlin Clark, as well as Camila Cardoso and DC's own Kiki Rice during the last women's college basketball season. Incredible documentary called Full Court Press. But Kristen also produced a 30 for 30 called Dream On, which documented the 1996 women's Olympic basketball team, which was founded in 1994, in part in partnership with the NBA, because the NBA and David Stern specifically had this idea for the WNBA. And they wanted to kind of get a feel for women's basketball fandom. And would this thing work? And so what they did was, at a time where there was no professional league, which is a huge, huge caveat here. But at a time where there was no professional league, they put together a barnstorming tour of exhibition games. And this team went around the country and played college teams. They played other teams from internationally, but they played everyone that they could all around the country. And what they did was they put together the best possible team because they figured that was the best way to sell the sport. And I realize that Clark is a cult of personality, and I mean that as a compliment, right? Like, her game, like, I'm on board. I almost bought a Caitlin Clark Iowa jersey 2 years ago because I think the black and yellow Iowa jerseys are sick, and I am such a huge fan of her game. Steph Curry has been my favorite NBA player for, at this point, a decade and a half. Stylistically, the way he plays and the way she plays brings me joy. So I'm saying this as an enormous fan of hers. Like, it's just not where the game and the sport and everything is right now. We're not trying to test out a league. The league exists, and it's starting to make money, and it's starting to sell out arenas, and the TV ratings are really good. You have millions of people watching games. Some of those games where I don't know if they've crossed 1 million yet, but certainly hundreds of thousands. It's pretty good TV ratings for random Tuesday nights or whatever, are games that don't involve Caitlin Clark. Yes, her games get bigger numbers, for sure. She is the biggest star in the sport. But this gets to the Tiger Woods thing. Did Tiger Woods grow golf? Absolutely. Absolutely. There's no doubt that a lot of people who turned in for Tiger Woods stayed because they found other things they like in golf. And as Tiger has dipped in and out of the game with his injuries and all the other stuff that's gone on with Tiger Woods the last 20 years, those people, some of them have continued to stay around. But it's because they found something else. And ultimately, if we're going to have a long-term growth of the women's game, it can't be because we force-feed Caitlin Clark and everything is reliant upon Caitlin Clark, or even expand it, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Nika Mule, Camila Cardoso, like Cam Brink, this rookie class, and the stars that are coming. Juju Watkins, Paige Beckers, Kiki Rice, Hannah Hidalgo. It's going to have to be because people tune in to watch them, but latch on to the sport itself. And 5 games or whatever they're going to play in the Olympics, 6 games, I think it is. 3 knockout or 3 tournament style and then 3 knockout games, or 3 round robin, 3 knockout games. Is not going to be the difference in women's basketball succeeding or not. It's actually on the merits of it being a marketing decision is a very silly argument that I don't think holds a lot of water. Because long term, I don't think Caitlin Clark being on the Olympic team makes that much of a difference. The best thing that can happen relative to Caitlin Clark for the sport of women's basketball is that the Indiana Fever stop being a disaster. That she's playing in meaningful games. Because while people are still watching her right now when they've got 3 wins, if she's on bad teams for years, there's going to be diminishing returns. USA Basketball is going to get good ratings on NBC. The games are going to be on NBC. Those contracts have long been signed, and people are going to watch because there's USA across the chest. The marketing thing, even if you want to make that argument, which I don't, I think it's very silly, actually doesn't hold that much water in the first place. Because there's millions of people across this country and across the world, like me, who used to watch golf because Tiger Woods played, and we don't watch anymore. And if you want to grow women's basketball, will there inevitably be a large percentage of people that are that way with Caitlin Clark? Yeah, you can't prevent that. But it's going to be the people that are open-minded to latching on to more than just Caitlin Clark that's actually going to grow the game in the long term. We've got a couple more calls. We will take them next. 301-230-0980. Then David Aldridge coming up at 5 p.m. talking NBA Finals here on The Hoffman Show. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. David Aldridge, just over 10 minutes from right now, talking NBA Finals. And I do think it would probably be wise of us to get David's thoughts as a Hall of Fame journalist who's covered basketball for 40 years. Thoughts on this topic. We'll talk about Dan Hurley and the Lakers and everything basketball with David coming up at 5 o'clock. But this topic, if you're just tuning in, is that Caitlin Clark didn't make the Olympic team. And actually the calls today, I will say this, so far, Ant, the calls today have been pretty reasonable. It's like, yeah, I want to see the best team. I'd like to see the best players make it. Caitlin Clark is not currently that. We just have a lot of people that are smart calling in the show, which I like. And not saying you have to agree with me. You just not have to make dumb arguments. That's all I ask. But people have made good points. Why are you laughing?
I mean, they have. No, I was mainly laughing, though, because you said you don't have to agree with me, but you just can't make dumb arguments.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm open to a discussion, but when your discussion is full of when your argument is full of nonsense, and I'm like, that's nonsense, that's not my fault. Yeah. I'm trying to be nicer about it. Let's see how it goes. 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Let's go to Sydney. Sydney, thanks. Oh, Sydney, you have to wait till I put you on the radio before you start talking. But you're on the radio now, so you can start talking.
Thank you. Thanks for taking my call.
You got it.
I think Caitlin should be on the Olympic team because that one spot would not hurt that team. And marketing is important because Christian Laettner was on the Dream Team team. And he wouldn't probably qualify to be on that team.
Sydney, are you just trying to be the person that I was just talking about? Sorry, I said it would be nice. Sydney, are you aware of the history of Christian Laettner and his spot on the 92 Olympic team? I don't think you are. Why was he on the Olympic team in 1992?
Because he was one of the best players, if not the best player in college basketball at that time.
Right. But was he required to be on the team? Like, okay, but he wasn't one of the best 12. He was required to be on the team.
No, he was not.
Because in the agreement that allowed NBA players to play, there was a requirement for a college player to be on the team. That is no longer true. And, by the way, people crushed Laettner for being on that team and crushed the decision for it to be Laettner. Not only just like that spot in that part of the agreement, but a lot of people thought it should have been Shaq, which, in hindsight, was correct. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. But here's the point, though.
No. That's just okay. I'm going to establish that the main crux of your argument there was something that you didn't know.
Well, that might be true, but the point is she's the most prolific women's college basketball player from a statistical standpoint that's played the game. And from a marketing standpoint, because they're about to take a break between the Olympics and when they resume. And if you do know this, college women's basketball players go overseas when they're not playing, so they lose a marketing strategy during the summer.
You've lost your right to be on the show. College women's players don't go overseas. Many professionals do because the game is not at a point for the WNBA where they can make money here that satisfies their needs, considering athletic careers are very short. And thus, overseas, there's a lot of money to be made. Like, you can go play in the French league, which is like let's say the third or fourth best league over there, and you can make, as an American player who's like a really solid WNBA player, you make like $250,000, $300,000. Pretty good deal. And players play in Turkey, they play in Israel, they play in France, they play in Belgium, they play in England, they play all over. They used to play a lot of them in Russia, and then Russia ruined it because Russia's terrible. The marketing argument should not be a part of this discussion because it's the Olympic Games and it's not a marketing tool. It's a place where the best in the world representing their country go to compete. If you would like to make an argument that Caitlin Clark's presence on the 2024 team helps you win the gold medal in 2028 and 2032 and maybe even 2036, that's fine. There are no players under 26 on this roster. I think that's kind of nuts. There's no one that's going to be younger than 30 on the next one that will have any Olympic experience. That doesn't seem optimal long-term planning-wise. And the USA does have the ability to take a little bit for granted because they're going to win the gold medal barring absolute disaster, because they are still significantly more talented at this stage in global women's basketball than everybody else. However, you shouldn't take that for granted. You should put the best players. You would then cost a player who deserves to be on the team over her spot, which imagine being like, hey, sorry, you're the last cut because we got to get Caitlin Clark on the team. That's not great on a human level. And the marketing impact of the Olympics is so minimal on the WNBA. That's the part that, like, everyone just screams. It's like Caitlin Clark marketing. It's word association. It's like a Pavlovian response. Caitlin Clark marketing. Ah! And it's like, nah. She's going to sit on the bench mostly for 6 games. Her playing better in the WNBA on the back half of that break is more important from a marketing standpoint. And by the way, it'll be talked about a lot. And some of it will be like, she apparently told her coach, Christy Sides, hey, they woke up a monster. I don't think Caitlin's actually been asleep. I feel like Caitlin probably said that in jest, to be honest. But if she comes out of the Olympic break well-rested, able to work on some things with her game, maybe makes a tweak or two that sticks, and all of a sudden she's averaging 25, 8, and 5 a game on the back end of her rookie season, that's way more important for the WNBA going into the following year than anything she would do in Paris. So even if you make the marketing argument, your argument stinks. Also, it's the Olympic Games. Don't make a marketing argument. That's it. That's the segment. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, David Aldridge chimes in on this, and we're also going to definitely talk predominantly about the NBA Finals. There's a championship on the line, and the Dallas Mavericks are in a big hole in their pursuit of it. DA, next on the Team 980. It's the Hoffman Show, hour number 2 here on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And just after 5 o'clock, it is time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Today, it is our pleasure, what a gift, to welcome in the Hall of Famer, David Aldridge, senior columnist at The Athletic, talking about the NBA Finals. And David, that's the only thing happening in the entire world of basketball. How lucky for us that we just get to focus on basketball and absolutely nothing else.
Isn't it awesome that we get to just talk about basketball and people who know what they're talking about and have some intelligence to offer and aren't just flying in for the first time in 30 years? That's awesome.
David, I need you to stop talking before I can cuss myself nodding in agreement. I do want to talk about the basketball first, in part because we just spent the first hour on the Clark stuff and I need a cleanse. Although I do want to get your opinion on it because you have such a great history of USA basketball. So we'll get there. And I do think the Lakers story is obviously interesting as well. But to start with the basketball, what is your big takeaway from the first 2 games of this series where the Celtics obviously did what they do, won by 25 plus, something they've done more than any team, I think, in the history of the league. And game 1, much closer last night, but ultimately it feels like the Celtics just have, like, I don't know whether it's they have too much or they have the right stuff. What do you take away from these first 2 games?
Well, I mean, the one thing that Boston's done very well, I think, in the first 2 games is really kind of throw sand in what Dallas has been doing offensively throughout the playoffs. I mean, when Dallas has been at its best, Luka's not just scoring; he's spraying the ball all over the place. He's getting a bunch of assists. Guys are stepping into wide open threes and knocking them down. He's throwing lobs to Gafford and to Lively. I mean, the ball's just moving. And in the first 2 games, they're not making nearly enough shots. The other guys on the team, including Kyrie, is just not making enough shots. I don't think they're getting bad shots. Not quite as open as they've been, throughout the playoffs, but they're shots that they should make, and they haven't made them the first 2 games. And I think what that's manifest in. Yes, Luka had wound up with a triple double or wound up with 11 assists, but he had 8 turnovers. And I just think he's. I don't think it's his fault that he's trying to do much, but I think he's trying to do too much because the other guys are not helping him. They're not making the shots that have to be made to beat a team as good as Boston. Like, you have to really play well to beat the Celtics. There's a reason they're 14-2 in the playoffs, coming off a 64-win regular season. Like, they're really good. So, you have to play at a really high level, and Dallas offensively has not played at nearly a high enough level. I mean, that game was there to be won last night. I don't think Boston shot the ball especially well. Tatum has not shot the ball well at all the first 2 games. He's passing up open shots. I mean, to his credit, he's still putting his head down, and he's facilitating. He's playmaking. He's creating for other guys. He's getting hockey assists. But they're not, they had a stretch at the end of the first quarter, and Porzingis came in and played great in game 1 in the first half. But it's not like they've been shooting the lights out the whole 8 quarters. They haven't. Dallas's defense has done a nice job in some regard and taken some things away. So the series is not unwinnable for Dallas, but they have got to start making shots. They haven't made enough shots the first 2 games.
David Aldridge with us here on the Hoffman Show, of course, senior columnist for The Athletic. David, Kyrie has such a phenomenal resume in the playoffs, one of the all-time stone-cold killers in the playoffs, author of perhaps one of the 5 greatest shots in finals history, the winner in that series over the Warriors. Why do you think he struggled so much in these first 2 games? There's obviously the defense he's playing. There's the atmosphere around him in Boston with the history there. Is it those 2 things? Is it something else? What is it?
It's a good question, Craig. I mean, I don't believe in stats normally because I just think stats serve a purpose until they no longer serve a purpose. You know what I mean? Like, sure. You could say, well, this guy only hit 185 against this right-handed pitcher, and then he gets 2 hits off of him, and now his average is 195. You know what I mean? Like, so I mean, that what does it mean? But 0-12 certainly stands out. Like, it's it certainly is. noticeable, right? So, I don't know. I mean, is he trying so hard to show these guys what they're missing? Maybe. I didn't get the sense. I was at both games. I didn't get the sense he was forcing it. First game, he just missed. Like I said before, he had 5 wide open 3-pointers in game 1, wide open, and he missed them all. Now, the chances of that happening again, I don't think are very good. But he still missed a lot of shots last night that he normally makes. So, is it the finals? It could be. It could be. Hey, the finals are important. People put a lot of pressure on themselves to play well on the biggest stage in the world. That could be it too. I don't think it's because he's in Boston and he feels intimidated by the crowd or anything like that. I don't believe it's that. I think he just missed. He's just missing. And I would put more stock in, the desire to win a championship can be overwhelming. And we've seen a lot of players, including Tatum and Brown, on that stage not play well. They just have more help now than they did 2 years ago. But 2 years ago, they didn't play very well against Golden State in the finals. So, it's not the first time that great players haven't played well. It's a lot of pressure because you want this so bad. Sometimes I think it locks you up a little bit in terms of not letting you play with the kind of looseness that you need to play with to play well against a team, again, as good as Boston.
No doubt. And part of the Boston goodness is they have what Mike Breen described on the broadcast last night as one of the greatest defensive backcourts in the history of the league. Yeah. And my first reaction was like, whoa, that seems hyperbolic. But then you think about it, I don't know how many backcourts in the history of the league have 2 all-defensive players like Derek White and Drew Holiday. With your history of the game, I'll defer to you here. Like, how correct is Breen's statement there that this is one of the all-time defensive backcourts that we've ever seen in the NBA's history?
I mean, I don't think that's wrong. I mean, they are both outstanding defensive players. They are plus elite level defensive players. Derek White block shots. I know the block last night everybody saw, and it was incredible hustle. But he blocks shots for a guard at a rate that's insane. Like, he just blocks shots. Like, he's a shot blocker. Like, it's just like, it doesn't make sense, but he does it all the time. And Giroux is just a premier defender. He can play anybody, 1 through 5, doesn't matter who he's guarding. He's guarded Embiid. He's guarding all the best players in the world. He guards them all, and he guards them all well. He just has an incredible ability and an amazing core strength that allows him to play against guys that are 2 or 3 inches taller than him, and they try to post him up, and they don't get anywhere with him. And he's just smart and just knows angles and knows the game and just really plays at an incredibly high level defensively. They're pretty good. I mean, that's another reason why. Maybe it's the primary reason why Kyrie is struggling, because he's playing against Holiday and White a lot. I mean,
right. And then your break is, they switched a wing on me. Oh, it's Jaylen Brown, who's just terrible defensively, obviously.
Tatum. You know what I mean? Like, Boston's really good. I can't say this enough. Like,
right.
It's weird. People kind of keep acting like this isn't a really, really good team. No, they're a really good team. And they're really hard to beat 4 times in a series. It doesn't matter who's playing them. Dallas was coming off of a real heater, like they were dominant against Minnesota. They took care of Oklahoma City. It was a good team, they're just playing against an elite, smart, well-coached, hungry team. I can't stress enough how good Boston's top 6 or 7 players are. They're amazingly good. I mean, even Al Horford on the 17th green of his career, and still knows how to play and be effective and can score 12, 14 points, get a big rebound, block a big shot. You never have to worry about his minutes. He's going to play them smartly and efficiently. They're just really good, man. Their spacing is terrific most of the time. And they just, the block again is exemplary. They don't give up on a play ever. I think Jaylen Brown fouled P.J. Washington. I mean, that was rather clear. They missed that call. But the fact that they didn't give up on the play and chased it down is really kind of speaks to who they are as a team.
No doubt. They are well built. They play the right way. And if not to count chickens before they hatch here, David, just to make the math easier, if they were to sweep this series, they would finish this season having played 100 games and having won 80 of them. They are currently 78-20 on the year. So whether they finish with those nice even round numbers or not, if they were to finish this off and you think of the champions of the last 20 years, like, how does this Boston team stack up?
I mean, I think they would stack up with any of the recent great teams of note, right? I mean, I think the San Antonio team, maybe in 2014, the one that came back after they blew the lead against Miami, and they came back and they killed Miami in the finals. And I think they won 64 games. Also, I could be wrong on that by 1 or 2 games in the regular season, but they came back on a mission. They were locked in, completely focused. That was the year Popovich took them to Colorado Springs for training camp and made them watch the fourth quarter of Game 6 over and over and over again, so that they knew exactly why they lost that game, exactly why they didn't get that rebound, exactly why Ray Allen made that 3 to tie the game up. And so they were really locked in, and I think this Boston team, to me, is a lot like that team. They were really locked in. 2 years ago, I don't know if they were a better team than Golden State, but they certainly were as good as Golden State. They had an opportunity to win it, and they didn't get it done. I mean, they had a couple of chances at home to really put the screws to the Warriors, and they didn't meet the moment. And Golden State, being a veteran team, sussed that out and said, all right, well, you're not going to take it, we will. And now I think 2 years later, they've got some maturity and some calluses, and they've got 2 really good additions in Porzingis and Giroux, and they're playing a lot better. And so, yeah, I mean, I would put them in that category of recent NBA champions that just kind of from minute one of that regular season were clearly the best team all year and played like it and kept playing like it. And finally had nobody else left to play, and because they had beaten everybody, because they were simply maybe the second Golden State team with Durant that was clearly just better than everybody else that year, So I would put them in that category for sure. Recently,
wow, that's high praise. So to appease the Mavericks fans and also to not make us look very silly, should Dallas come back on like some freezing cold takes website, if Dallas were to come back, what will have happened? How does Dallas turn this around?
Well, again, it starts with they got to be better offensively. I just think. I mean, they just got. You can't beat a team when you miss the few open shots you do get against them. And again, there are other guys. I don't know. I can't remember what the exact number was last night, but at one point, the non-Luka shoot players on the Mavericks were 1 of 14 on threes. Like, somebody's got to make a three. Like, they were getting practice threes. I mean, this is wide open corner threes, and they kept missing them. Somebody's got to make some. It can be Washington. It can be Derek Jones. It can be Kleba. It can be anybody. Somebody's got to make a shot besides Luka. Or you're not going to win. You're not going to win this series. So they've got to get more efficient offensively. Going home, as we all know, it's the cliche, but that's because it's true. Role players play better at home. Most players play better at home. So I would expect that they'll make some of those shots the next 2 games. Now, they have to make enough of them to beat Boston. And then they are gambling, and I think it's a fair gamble. They're gambling that Tatum will not hold up as a playmaker over 7 games, that eventually he will get frustrated and start jacking up shots and trying to score. He has not taken the bait the first 2 games. He has not forced a whole lot of shots. If he continues to do that, it's going to be really hard to beat the Celtics. But that's Dallas's play. That's what they're trying to do. So we'll see. On the road when you're sped up a little bit and you're a little uncomfortable and the crowd's on you a little bit, we'll see if that impacts how the Celtics play. And Dallas should play better at home. Obviously, they need to get Game 3, but they need to get Game 4 too, right? Like, they need to win both of them to have a realistic shot of coming back and winning this thing.
This is the fun part of 7-game series is a team is up 2-0. It feels like it's over, but realistically, all they've done is won their home games. If Dallas wins the same, we're 2-2 and we go back to Boston for game 5. And some parts of this conversation feel very silly. That is the nature of these series. And we cannot help ourselves, David, because all we can do is it's kind of your stats argument, but in game form. The stats are true until they have the next thing happen, and then all of a sudden they're not they're not true anymore because we have more information. David Aldridge, senior columnist with us for The Athletic. All right, David, we did many minutes on the finals. We've done our due diligence. We've done our journalistic duty to focus on the main thing first. But two obviously major stories basketball-wise outside of the finals. And we'll keep it in the NBA first with Dan Hurley turning down the Lakers. I think the most interesting aspect of this story is it kind of like leaks its way out through some of the reporting, and I think those around the league have known this. Like the Lakers' prestige, sure, it's there because of the banners, but in many ways, I think it's misunderstood what the Lakers organization is, which is run like a family business in a league now full of Fortune 500 companies. Like, what is the status of the Lakers organization, and how do they get back to being where, I don't want to say where they think they are, but certainly where they think they should be in terms of the NBA's hierarchy?
Well, I mean, I think that's a good point, Craig. I think people tend to, kind of get mesmerized by the jerseys and by the history and not realize that is a family-run company. The Buss family runs that team, and they do not have the wherewithal of a Steve Ballmer or some of the other, multi-billionaire owners that are now their rivals and their opponents. If the number, I have no reason to assume that the number that's been reported is incorrect. 5 years, $70 million, a perfectly good offer to make to a head coach, but that's not going to blow somebody out of the water. It was a fair offer. It was a good offer. But in the context of Monty Williams making, $12, $13 million a year to coach the Detroit Pistons, you know what I mean? That's you got to do better than that. If you're the Lakers and you want to blow people out of the water. I mean, I just, if a guy says, if you say I'm going to offer you $70 million and the guy says, let me think about it, I think he's trying to figure out a reason not to take the job. To me, if I'm not blown away by the offer, and it's so much money and it's so much prestige that I have to take it, then that tells me that the offer's not good enough. So I'm not saying they made a bad offer. It wasn't a bad offer. It was a very good offer. But again, in the context of being amongst these sharks, surrounded by billionaire sharks, you can't just make an okay offer or even a good offer. It has to be a spectacular offer, to get somebody to leave UConn that just won back-to-back national championships, and seems to have figured out how to do this at the college level, at the highest level. So, it's food for thought for the Lakers in terms of how they do things, but I don't know that they can change very much. This is kind of who they are with the buses running it, and I'm not saying they're running it badly. I'm just saying they have limits. Even the Lakers have limits with their current ownership structure, and stuff like this shouldn't get out unless he's taken the job. That to me is the one, I think, just bad thing that makes the Lakers look bad, is that this got out and he didn't take the job. If he takes the job, nobody cares, but he didn't take the job. It's like you told people about something that hadn't happened yet, so that is problematic, I think, for the Lakers, because now no matter who they hire, everybody's going to say, well, he wasn't their first choice. And that's going to, rightly or wrongly create a narrative around whoever that person is.
Yeah, absolutely. Where does this leave them? Like, is it JJ Redick's job now? Because he's the other big name that's been bantied about, or is there, an assistant coach somewhere that is just a really good basketball coach that no one has ever heard of that we think emerges as a potential favorite, or another person who's had a job before? Like, where does this leave them?
Well, James Borrego, is the other name that's been mentioned and was a former head coach, and I thought got a raw deal. Was a young guy, first head coaching job, but like most young guys in the first head coaching job, the team wasn't very good, so he got blamed for it. So, but yeah, he's obviously the other name that's been mentioned as a possible candidate. He knows Anthony Davis very well from their days together with the Pelicans. So, would certainly, I think, do a good job as a head coach. But to me, I'm not sure right now if I'm a young coach coming off of being fired somewhere, and the expectation at my next job is if you don't win the NBA championship, you're going to get fired. I don't know that that's where I want to be. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure that's the job I want. I don't know. My guess is they will figure out a way to get JJ Redick to say yes. Because, again, it's just been out there for so long now that even if it doesn't work for good reasons, JJ Redick has a change of heart. He decides he doesn't want to do it. Now, if he turns you down, now you really look bad. Now, you know what I mean? Like, you're really starting to look bad here. So I think they will figure out a way to get JJ Redick to say yes.
All right, last thing for David Aldridge here on the Hoffman Show. Caitlin Clark has left off the U.S. Olympic team. Some of the commentary is asinine and insane. Some of it, I think, is actually pretty interesting. I think most of the marketing discussions is nuts. And even if we take that argument on its merits, David, I actually don't think, like, Caitlin Clark resting and averaging 25, 8, and 5 for Indiana on the back end of the break would be way better marketing for the WNBA long-term than the 4 minutes she'll play in Paris. But there is, I think, a interesting discussion, at least, around not the Christian Laettner spot, because you provided some great context on Twitter for that spot in the history of Laettner on the USA, or when it comes to USA basketball in 92, but kind of the Anthony Davis spot. There is no player on this roster that's going to Paris that is under 26 years old, which means in 4 years, no one with any Olympic experience will be under 30. So what do you make of kind of that young player argument and kind of how USA basketball operates, both its men's and its women's teams, keeping an eye on now, but also keeping an eye on the future?
Well, I mean, look, I'm loath to say anything because this is just, some of it is bots. I understand that, but some of it is just people being asinine and ridiculous. And you're not helping Caitlin Clark by being asinine and ridiculous. And some of her fan base is just beyond the pale in terms of their ardor for her at the expense of all logic, all reason, all history, all everything. It's just, I want to watch Caitlin Clark. That's all it is. And it has nothing to do with how USA Basketball has historically chosen their teams for the most part. And again, everything has an exception. But for the most part, what USA Basketball has done is look to people that have been part of the pipeline. They've been in the pipeline through multiple USA Basketball rotations and events. That doesn't just mean the Olympic team. It means they played World Cup. It means they played under 19. They played under 17. They played 3-on-3. That's how they like to pick their teams. They want people that have been in the system. Now, Caitlin Clark has played some international competition for USA Basketball. She was on the under-19 team a couple of years ago and played very well. I think she got the MVP that year of that tournament. But it's compared to the other players that they picked, it's not as sterling a resume. It just isn't. And you can whine about it and yell about it and tell me I don't know what I'm talking about, and tell Rebecca Lobo, who was only on the 1996 women's team that was the greatest single women's basketball team of all time. You can tell her she's stupid too, because I've seen that on Twitter, because she had the audacity to say, wait a minute, there's some nuance here that you may not be thinking about. There's some context here to how USA Basketball picks its teams. To your point, Craig, you're telling me, Caitlin Clark fan, that you're going to just sit by comfortably and without any rancor if Caitlin Clark makes the Olympic team and plays 10 minutes a game. You're going to just say, oh, that's great. No, you're not. You're going to say she should be playing ahead of whomever. she's better than whomever. Why isn't she playing? Blah 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 blah. Because that's what they always do. And so it just chaps me. The marketing. Look, I respect people. There's people that I respect who have made that argument, who are good people, and I've known them for years. It's a preposterous argument. It's just simply preposterous. And it's not made in good faith. I mean, again, to your point, she's not going to play a lot. I'm sorry, she's not. And so you're going to be even angrier that she's not playing, which is going to create another problem for USA for the basketball team. And the idea that this is somehow the last Olympics that we're ever going to have is just what? And I try to point this out to people. The next Olympic Games, the next Summer Olympic Games, are going to be in Los Angeles in 2028. What does that mean? That means that every marquee event that NBC wants to have will be live in prime time. Every single one. Now, usually that's track and field, it's swimming, it's gymnastics, right? Those are kind of like the big three. That you usually have good U.S. representation on those teams. They win medals. People like to see U.S. athletes win medals, and so you put those shows on. Now, most of the time they're tape delayed because they're somewhere 9 time zones from here. But in 2028, they're going to be live in prime time, all of them, including women's basketball. So, is there a better chance that in 4 years, Caitlin Clark, who will then be a 4-year WNBA veteran on a team that should be worlds better if the Indiana Fever front office has any competence whatsoever, building around her and Aaliyah Boston, that should be a team that's in the playoffs, maybe in the WNBA championship series once or twice between now and 2028. She's going to be in 4 All-Star games and put up numbers, and she's going to be an even bigger star in 4 years than she is now. Does it make sense to maybe let her go through a rotation now after the Olympics where she can be on a World Cup team and she can play in some training camps and get some more international experience? By which time Diana Taurasi will I'm assuming, will not play in the 2028 games.
Careful, David. You never know with DT. You never know with DT.
You never know. DT's got a lifetime pass. I'm not mad at her. But I'm just saying, logically, if we could apply logic for 5 seconds here, it might make more sense for her to wait 4 years, and then she can be on every Olympic team for the next 6 Olympics. She can be on the 28 team, the 32 team, the 36 team, the 40 team, the 44 team. She can play as long as she wants on the Olympics. But she just can't play this year because she's not one of the best 12 players in the world. She's not one of the 12 best U.S. basketball players that we can pick from. She just isn't. I'm sorry. She's not. And the thing that really chaps me, and I'm sorry I'm going over here, but this is it's just been driving me nuts.
Go for it. Get it off your chest, David. I'm here for you.
The thing that really annoys me and angers me is people who say, well, this is just the dumbest thing that USA basketball could do because this is the chance to put women's basketball on the map. You know how you could put women's basketball on the map? Watch a WNBA game. You know how you could put women's basketball on the map? Go to a WNBA game. You know how you can put women's basketball on the map? Go to more college games and support college teams. You know how you can put women's basketball on the map? Buy women's merchandise. You know how you can put women's basketball on the map? Cover women's basketball. That's how you could do that. You could do it immediately by patronizing women's basketball products, services, and teams. You could do it now. But you say, if Caitlin Clark's not on the team, I won't do any of those things. Well, then you don't really care about women's basketball. And that's what annoys me, is that you are using her for your own really not good agenda. I'll just leave it at that. You don't really care about women's basketball, and you're cloaking this in, I care about women's basketball. I want to grow the game. Okay, Do all of that stuff I just said. That's how you can support women's basketball. That's how you can help grow women's basketball. Make the TV ratings so high that they break all kinds of records. That's how you can support women's basketball. It cannot just be, if Caitlin Clark doesn't, then I won't. Because you're just supporting one person. And that does not help the game grow. That creates the very division that is fomenting all of this. That, again, Caitlin Clark has not asked you to do. She doesn't want any of this. She wants to play basketball. Let her play and get better. She will get better. She's too good not to. She will be a great player in the WNBA very soon. It just isn't going to be tonight. So let her grow. Let her take her lumps like everybody who ever has played an organized sport has to do when they play at a higher level. Go to junior high to high school, you take your lumps. You go from high school to college, you take your lumps. You go from college to the pros, you take your lumps. Let her take hers. She's not asking for special treatment. Stop providing it for her and stop demanding it for her.
Amen. Here's the question I'll ask you, David. Do you feel better now or worse? Because I feel like sometimes when I go on rants like you just went on, I actually feel worse after instead of feeling better.
No, I feel the same because it's not going to do any good. because there's this. I'll leave you with this. I made this terrible mistake one time when after Obama's second inauguration, he had Beyonce was part of the program, and she did her Beyonce-ness. And I went on Twitter and I said, it's just a shame that God didn't bless Beyonce with good looks or intelligence or talent. And I didn't think I had to say I'm kidding. I'm being sarcastic here because clearly she's incredible. But oh my God, Craig, it was the Bayhive at its absolute worst. And it's just like the presence of a joke, you just don't have it in you, do you? The understanding that you can, and it's the same with Caitlin Clark's fans. It's the same. There's no talking to some of them. There's not all of them,
of course, but
there's a segment of them. There is just no talking to them.
Well,
I tried being nice.
Yeah.
Nice didn't work. Then I went to sarcastic, and they got even madder. So
that doesn't work.
I'm done.
Yeah, no, I've definitely tried to go to the you catch more flies with honey theory. I don't know if they're catching anything, but people are just catching feelings. But hey, this is what happens in where we are in discourse. And David, we could get into a much deeper conversation where we all get fired, but I'm going to stop us here. Thank you, as always, for your time, and hopefully we'll be talking to you soon, and perhaps even later in these NBA Finals.
My pleasure, Craig. Anytime.
That is David Aldridge, everybody. The Naismith Basketball Hall of Famer, winner of the Kurt Gowdy Award, is in the Hall of Fame for his journalism. And hot damn, Anthony. That's why he's there.
Yes.
That's why the man is there. He knows of what he speaks. We are very over on the clock. I don't know what we're doing next. I don't know when we're going to be back. It won't be that long, so don't go anywhere. But we're going to talk more about the Clark thing as we go here. Talk more NBA Finals. Also, the Washington Capitals have done something that is monumentally, no pun intended, interesting. Actually, we're going to talk about that next. What if I told you there was a side of Pro Football Focus that you didn't know existed, and the Washington Commanders just bought it? That's essentially what the Capitals just did. We'll explain and explore before we get back to some basketball at 6 p.m. 6 o'clock, we talk about the NBA Finals, 6:15. Anthony has now heard me talk for an hour about the Caitlin Clark thing, and he's heard one of the most epic rants in the history of our show from David Aldridge. But has super producer Anthony Haney been convinced that the correct decision was made in regards to Clark and the Olympic team? 6:15, you'll definitely want to stay tuned for that. Right now, though, a story that started to pop through my timeline a little bit this weekend. Actually, my guy Tony Squares texted me. Some of you might follow him on TikTok or Instagram or whatever. He does fantastic sports reels, very funny. And then we do some stuff on YouTube together. But Tony texted me and he goes, "Have you seen this Capitals story yet?" And I was like, "No. What Capitals story?" And start searching around and quickly learn that the Capitals have done something that has made the hardcore hockey fans very upset, and I understand why. It's also kind of genius, in an evil genius kind of way. Here's what happened if you are not familiar with the story as it went down this weekend. So there's a website called capfriendly.com. It is a mix between like SpoTrack or Over the Cap, these salary cap websites that track the salary cap for every single sport, and Pro Football Focus, advanced analytics, data, scouting reports, etc. And the Capitals bought the website, not so that they could make sure it's accurate and that all the data is NHL approved. No, they bought it so that they can shut it down. And in doing so, they are hiring some of the staff that worked on the website to work for them instead. This started to get word around the NHL because there are multiple teams, presumably the Capitals included, who had contracts with this website for premium content, which leads me to tell you this. Did you know, or ask you this rhetorically, did you know that there is an entire side of Pro Football Focus that you can't pay enough money to get access to? Because there is. There is an entire trove of data that Pro Football Focus collects, sorts, etc., that is only available to NFL teams. It's in part why they have access to some of this information that they then sort and whatever in the first place. And basically, I think all 32 teams are subscribed to Pro Football Focus and this team whatever, so that they can get the insights that PFF provides. Now, it's not like these are some secret super grades, right? PFF grades are the thing that gets talked about all the time. No, this is like analytic level information. Player X runs routes in this part of the field blank percent of the time. The pass rush win rate for players is this. And I know some of this stuff is like the public version. You can get it if you're a PFF premium subscriber. There's also like deeper stuff, and I really honestly don't know what all is in the deeper stuff because I have very rarely had team personnel share stuff with me or show me the interface, etc. And it was a couple of years ago, and I don't honestly remember what was in it. I'm not trying to protect a secret. I don't remember the secret information. But every single team uses it, which is always really funny when then a coach winds up in a press conference like, I don't care what PFF says. And like, yeah, sure, that's true. They don't care what PFF's grades are, which is the thing that PFF is best known for amongst football fans. But realistically, what PFF is not a grades company. They have a public-facing media apparatus that's fun, and a lot of those analysts do a really terrific job. But PFF's a data company. And if instead of having themselves bought out by one team and shutting down, they were like, well, we can sell a subscription to every single team and a bunch of college teams, by the way. And there's enough teams that'll pay us that we're going to make bank. And they do. They make, I'm sure, a gobsmack amount of money off of those subscriptions. We're talking tens of thousands of dollars per team per year, if not more. And instead, the Capitals, in a much smaller sport, where there is not as much money and not as much public-facing interest, because PFF definitely also makes money off of their public-facing media, whether that is ad sales on their podcast or premium subscriptions for fans on that level or whatever. This site, Cap Friendly, apparently got approached by the Caps, and they were like, we will pay you X amount to basically hire you, and you will cease to exist the public part of your website. And I feel bad, Anthony, for hockey fans, because I had never heard of this site because I'm not a hockey guy. It's not my thing. If that's your thing, by all means, I'm not going to yuck your yum. Other stuff tends to take precedent in my schedule. I don't even dislike hockey. I got other stuff I like more. But hockey fans apparently are super into this site. Like, it's a very known thing in like hardcore hockey circles. And so I poked around a little bit. It's incredibly cool. They have scouting. Like, if you want the scouting report of all the top players at the World Junior Championships this last year, as you prepare for the NHL draft, you can get that information on this website. It's got scouting reports like that. It's got cap data. It's got calculators to be like, oh, this is how much you can afford, or arbitration for this player is going to be X amount. Like, there is both financial and like player data that now the Capitals have the sole rights to. And I don't even know if there's a question here. Like, I just think it's a fascinating story that only, like, I don't think that there's like an NBA site that could do this. Sure, there's probably some NBA numbers, and like there are people that have created stats that get hired by teams in the media. I mean, John Hollinger created, I think it's PER, and then eventually got hired by the Grizzlies. He's no longer with them. He's now back writing with The Athletic. The guy who created Real Plus Minus for ESPN, I think ultimately left and worked for a team. Like, there's a bunch of guys on staffs, lower levels of the NFL that are formerly PFF analysts that I'm sure there will, within the next 5, let's call it 10 years for sure, but maybe in the next 5, be someone who is an offensive coordinator who actually, there might have just been one that got hired, at least as a position coach, if not as a coordinator, that like started as a PFF analyst that gets into the game at a lower level, on an analyst type of level, and rises the coaching ranks and is pretty good at the coaching thing. And next thing you know, they're running a unit. Eventually, presumably, there'll be a head coach that comes out of the PFF tree. What a wild statement. But I just think Anthony, it's a fascinating story. I'm sure if people, especially Caps fans, want to call in and either out of excitement for their team being the team that bought it, or being upset because they think this is kind of dirty, like, it's a pretty wild story.
I mean, are you willing to do whatever it's going to take to give you a competitive advantage? Like, I don't see that they did anything wrong.
No, definitely not. I mean,
anybody could have did it.
It's the dirty side of capitalism. If you can afford to do it, you can do it. Yeah. And the rich tend to get richer. And the rest of us are just screwed.
I mean, I hope this works, though. Like, I feel as though the Capitals are sort of kind of in a weird, like, transition period.
They're almost stuck.
Yeah.
Like, they are obviously not going to be like, Alex, it's time to go.
Yeah.
They're not going to do that. They're not going to let him retire anywhere else. And as long as he's around, you're not going to be terrible, and you're also kind of feel like you're trying to get him another championship if you can. But I do think that they've kind of just said, like, hey, dude, you can hang out as long as you want, but we're going to rebuild it a little bit as some of these contracts come off the books.
Yep.
And so they're entering a phase where if they can get an analytical advantage and a scouting advantage, then they absolutely should. I wonder... Like, obviously, the guys who ran this website are very, very smart. The stuff that they do is coveted by multiple NHL teams. The reason this got out initially before people even knew it was the Capitals was, I think I started this sentence earlier and never finished it. Whoopsies. Basically, other teams were told, like, hey, your contract with us is going to be terminated as of this date. And the Capitals are being nice enough to let this all go through the draft. So July 5th, I think, is the date that they're going to finalize the sale and shutter the site, because they want to allow fans to like enjoy the transaction period here, through the first couple of days of free agency, through the NHL draft, whatever. And then for the rest of time, it's like, nope, this is ours. But probably there's probably some contractual stuff. I'm sure like teams have, maybe it's like a rolling option or whatever, and you know, either side can cut it off, and it's like, okay, well, we've paid you through July 5th. So I'm sure it's more than just like out of the goodness of their heart. But then all of a sudden teams figured out like, oh, it's the Caps. Like teams were like, oh, someone must have bought it. It must be another team. And the Caps turned out to be that team. But I also wonder, like, how far ahead does this put the Caps for how long, right? Because the other teams know the information. And maybe there was a new something that was about to come that the Caps were like, no, don't launch that. Don't do that. We're going to pay you to make it worth your while to not put that on the website, and that's just for us. So who knows, you know, from this point forward, whatever these guys that are really smart think of, like that's intellectual property of the Capitals. But I also wonder if other teams were reliant on this website and this service for certain things that were important to them, how long does it take for these other teams to catch up, to hire the right people and recreate either their own versions of these formulas or this data or these calculators or whatever, / you know, recreate the ones that were more straightforward and less like original ideas, just ways to be more efficient in doing the salary cap, for instance?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, but I'm not going to lie, Craig. As a Capitals fan, I'm going to do my victory dance because it sounds like they gave him a 30-day eviction notice and told him, like, don't let the door hit you with a good look, split you. Like, that's what it sounds like. I don't know, but I hope this does, you know, help us to an extent. You see the Commanders going out, you know, stealing other people's, you know.
Yeah, they hired a new director of player development today.
Yep.
Which is an
and I'm
important
all
position.
for it. I'm all for it, Craig. Whatever we need to do to get this city back to its winning ways.
It's cutthroat business, sports.
Hey, I'm not complaining.
No.
Maybe I sound crazy, though.
I mean, it's so funny because we've spent an inordinate amount of the show today on whether or not very, very talented, but not one of the best 12, maybe even 15 players in the American pool should be included for marketing reasons. And then we're talking about teams being this ruthless. And it's like, no, this is sports. This is how this goes. Yeah. We can do marketing in exhibition games.
Yeah, we'll worry about that later.
And market the actual games itself, where being good is the best thing you can do for your marketing. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. The Dallas Mavericks are very good. The problem is the Boston Celtics look to be great. Anthony and I break down Game 2 of the NBA Finals next on the Hoffman Show. Final hour of the Hoffman Show here on the Team 980. Always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Coming up in just a little bit, have David Aldridge and I convinced Anthony that Caitlin Clark does not actually belong on the U.S. Olympic team. We've tried our damnedest. We'll see if we can convince the super producer here in just a few minutes. Also, some of the funniest tweets I've ever gotten. That before the end of the show. Anthony, we start now, though, the final hour talking about the NBA Finals, which are 2-0 Boston. Do the Dallas Mavericks not only have a comeback in them, but what's the most recent team? I think did Minnesota do this? No, Denver nearly did it. They did not. But we're down 2-0, then we come back and win in 6 to make your prediction correct. Do they have that in them, Anthony Haney?
I mean, the thing is, we've seen this before, Craig, in the finals,
have.
actually.
We have.
I do think there is a chance, and I think David Aldridge, he did a great job, describing what the Mavs have to do. They have to hit shots. They've been open as well. They've been open, and they just haven't, been able to follow through with hitting those shots. Luka clearly needs help. Kyrie, he isn't helping. PJ Washington, who we both definitely deem as the X factor in the series, he hasn't necessarily been too much help. Then you have the people coming off the bench. They necessarily haven't helped out either. So there's going to, require or need somebody to assist Luka in this series. But I will say, Porzingis did hurt himself yesterday, Craig.
That is a big deal.
He did hurt himself yesterday. So I think if there was a way for the Mavs to turn this series around, I think if Porzingis misses time, and I think you said this before the games even started, if Porzingis doesn't necessarily play or doesn't play that well, then the Mavs will have a chance. And if he's set to, miss maybe a game or two, who's to say that momentum doesn't shift? Who's to say the Mavs don't find an answer to, help Kyrie get easier shots, to help Kleber or, a Tim Hardaway or Jaden Hardy come off the bench and be able to assist or, just help score in general. So I think that is a big piece that is certainly we have to monitor.
That is 1,000% true. Porzingis is a total game changer. In a game that the Celtics won by 7, in the 23 minutes that Porzingis was on the floor, they were a plus 12. So he, in his 23 minutes, swings the game from a loss to a win. Single game plus minus is not always the best stat, but realistically, that's when he's on the floor, that's who they've been all year. They are just perfectly built. They have multiple players who provide rim protection, starting with Porzingis being 7'3", but Brown is a great shot blocker. Obviously, Derek White Zach Lowe called him the best shot blocking guard since Dwayne Wade, and I think that's accurate. You have multiple scoring options. You have the best on-ball defender in the league in Jrue Holiday, and Derek White is right there with him in that regard as well. And I do think when we talk about the missed shots for Dallas, some of that comes from the discomfort of playing Boston. And whether Porzingis is there or not, that's not going to change. Their perimeter defense and the uncomfortable nature and the difficulty with which they make everything and the kind of heightened sense of alertness you have to have. One, it's the finals. Your nerves are going to be frayed anyway. But two, when you are constantly in fear, subconsciously, not like anyone's afraid of anyone else, but there is a higher chance at all times that Jrue Holiday could pick your pocket, that Jaylen Brown could pick your pocket, that Jason Tatum, or Derek White, all these guys that they just have that can make ball handlers' days miserable affects the flow, the rhythm, the confidence of an offense. Will it be better at home? Yeah, it should. And is better play at home combined with a little bit worse shooting and everything from Boston on the road, minus Porzingis, enough to swing this series? Down 2-0, I don't know, but certainly feels like it's enough to swing game 3. And at that point, all anyone's done is win at home, and then we're on for game 4, and we'll see if Porzingis is back, if he is even out game 3 / what level he's playing at. But I think that, sometimes these things happen where teams go through shooting slumps, and it just happens. But I think when it comes to this series in Boston, like, I think Boston and Dallas is shooting slump. I think Boston's just tenacity and peskiness on defense is part of the reason why Dallas is missing even open shots, because you feel the pressure to make them.
Yeah, I was about to say that. I think they just feel it, like, naturally. The Celtics have been playing so aggressive that it's just ultimately, like, made all of those guys uncomfortable. Even Kyrie. Like, Kyrie is missing shots we've seen him routinely make. He looks sped up a little bit. He's turning the ball over a little bit more. Hasn't been, that just secure with the ball. So I definitely think maybe it's Boston, being in TD Garden. Like, maybe it's the atmosphere itself. So I think it is going to be interesting to see how, things swing when they go back to Dallas. But I think I'll be remiss not to shout out Drew Holiday. I think just him being a difference maker for the team in general, as opposed to like what they had with Marcus Smart. I think he is in every facet so much of a better player than Marcus Smart. He's a better defender. I think his selflessness,
right, which is saying something, right? Marcus Smart's a really good player, and he's an excellent defender.
Yeah.
But like Drew Holiday is I don't know if people understand this. Drew Holiday is going to the Hall of Fame if the Celtics win this series, and he might be going anyway. And I realize that seems insane, but like the bar for the Basketball Hall of Fame is actually not that high. And Drew Holiday has been the best defender in the league for damn near 15 years. Like the entire time I feel like I've been covering the NBA, Drew Holiday has been one of the 5 best defenders in it. It's nuts how good he is.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut you off mid-thought, but Drew is, he's something else. Let's see. Hold on, now I'm on his basketball reference page. He was an all-star there.
Two-time all-star.
Two-time all-star, which is it's because the West is so deep at guard.
Yep.
2-time all-star, but he is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-time All-NBA defensive player. And he probably should have won Defensive Player of the Year at least once. He somehow hasn't. His highest ever finish is 6th this year. But if you were to ask NBA players who's the best defender in the league, they would tell you Drew Holiday. Like, he would win the players' vote, which seems rather important.
Yeah. And I think on top of him just being, an all-world defender, it's just his selflessness. Like, he doesn't, have to go out and hunt shots. He just lets the game come to him. And yesterday, he was literally, I think he had 18 points in the paint, just all off, catching the ball and going, like, straight up.
I know he was at least 7 for 7 in the paint.
Yeah, he was making his impact felt down low. But you don't expect that out of a guard. And then, like, he can also get out to the wing. It's just, I just love how selfless he is as a player. And I think his selflessness is ultimately what's going to help this team win it all. If they go out and win it all. I don't necessarily know if they're going to. We shall see what happens with Porzingis. But if Porzingis plays, this series is over.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Greg. You got me again.
Look, Luka still hasn't had a 40-burger in the series, and I feel like he's due for one.
But Tatum hasn't either, though. He struggled all series.
That's the thing. But he hasn't. Like, he struggled shooting the ball.
And
I think this is an important thing, right? Like, last night, Tatum 1 for 7 from 3, 6 of 22 from the field, but he's got 18 points by the end of it because he hits 5 free throws. He's got 9 rebounds, 12 assists. He's only got 3 turnovers, right? Jaylen Brown, by the way, 6 turnovers. He turns the ball over so much in the postseason. But he was, despite that, it's about as good of a 6 turnover game as you're going to see because defensively he's a menace. Meanwhile, Luka's got 32, 11, and 11, but he's got 8 turnovers. 8. You can't operate like that. You also can't do a radio show with hiccups. So I'm going to hope that these go away in the break. This could be an absolute. You thought what happened to the Celtics in Game 1 was a disaster. You try to do a radio show with hiccups. All right. When we get back, we've been talking about it all show long, including with the Hall of Famer David Aldridge. Caitlin Clark was not named to the U.S. Olympic team for Paris. A lot of people are upset. Some people have some valid arguments. Anthony wants to have a discussion. So we'll have a discussion next. the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. So Caitlin Clark didn't earn a spot on the U.S. Olympic team. And we've been talking about it. We talked about it for the first hour of the show, took some great calls on it, took one very not good call on it, but that's okay. Sometimes these things happen. Then we talked to David Aldridge about it, and David had thoughts as a 40-year basketball scribe who is in the Naismith Hall of Fame for his work as a journalist. And David and I both firmly believe that USA Basketball made the right decision here, that they looked at their player pool and said, okay, what's the best team we can create? And at current status, that team does not include Caitlin Clark, and that is how that decision should be made. And specifically to Clark, David brought up a fantastic point that typically USA Basketball makes decisions with players who have been through the process of a cycle with them. And while Clark does have some experience with USA Basketball, she hasn't played in any major tournaments or made any other non-Olympic rosters at the senior level. This would be her first senior call-up ever. And that's just not something that USA Basketball has really ever done with an Olympic team. Even Anthony Davis had been around the program at a really high level more consistently than Clark had. So, Anthony, you, though, are unconvinced. Talk to me.
So I'm not going to lie, Craig. I was unconvinced up until, David Aldridge came on. And because my main comparison was Anthony Davis. It was the Breonna Stewarts and people of that nature in terms of, they were rookies on these Olympic teams. Why not Caitlin Clark kind of thing? Especially if you're trying to grow the game. She's one of the best college players coming into the WNBA. Why not add her? But then when you bring in the fact that, Anthony Davis got to, mesh and gel, build chemistry with some of these guys, work through the program a little bit, I think that adds a little bit more merit to, his scenario or his situation. But when you talk about Caitlin Clark, I guess it's different because she was in the Final Four. She has no chemistry. She has no experience with these women that are going to be representing the team. So that was one of my main like pushbacks in terms of we did it here, why not for her kind of thing.
For sure. And here's what I would also say, right? Don't you think that USA Basketball, for the marketing reasons, would want her on the roster? That if it was close, that they'd be like, yeah, no, we're giving it to Clark. Of course. And I don't know if you caught this, Anthony, but the way I phrased it when we came into the segment here, Clark didn't earn her spot. Not she was left off. She didn't earn her spot. And I just saw a tweet from Bomani where he posted a clip from his podcast, and that was the tweet. I haven't had a chance to listen to the clip yet. But I think that framing is important, right? Because the way this has mostly been framed is Caitlin Clark left off Olympic roster, which factually, I guess, is correct. But also, Caitlin Clark didn't earn spot on roster is more correct. It more accurately reflects what has gone on. Because if Caitlin Clark had come out and averaged 20 a game and was not leading the league in turnovers and maybe contributed to some more wins for Indiana, and the reason Indiana's winning, to be clear, or isn't winning, is not on Caitlin Clark. That's a terribly incompetently run organization at this stage with two tremendous players in Aaliyah Boston and Caitlin Clark, who, with better coaching and infrastructure and roster around them, would be maximized far better. But had Clark come out and played better, she could be on this team. But she does lead the WNBA in turnovers. She's shooting 32% from three, which at volume, she's made more threes than anyone else in the league, not on a per-game basis because they've also played more games than anyone else in the league, I still believe is true at this point. But she's like fourth in the league in three-pointers made per game. Like she's having a very, very good rookie year a quarter of the way into it. and will continue to presumably get better. But she hasn't played well enough to earn it. And she had an opportunity. She's in the pool. I think it should be said there is a significantly bigger snub on this team. Or not on this team. And that's Arika Ngubawale. Like, what do you tell Arika? Sorry, you're averaging 26 a game. You're hitting big shots. You've been a badass for multiple years. You're an all-star. You're this, you're that. And you're still not good enough? What else is she supposed to do? Caitlin, it's pretty easy. Hey, you need to miss less shots and not turn the ball over as much. And those are things that will come with experience. And like 4 years from now, she'll be a shoo-in. But that's the thing. There actually is it's not that hard to make the basketball case for Caitlin. And if you frame it as she didn't earn her spot versus she was left off, we start having a different discussion. Because I will tell you, USA basketball is not stupid. Had this been remotely close, she'd be on the team. Her not making it tells you it wasn't particularly close.
Here's a counter question.
Okay.
I feel as though, because I feel like the whole marketability thing has been like, a side argument, like blown out of proportion. But to an extent, do you think it should have mattered in the slightest? Just because we know the draw that she's, brought to the WNBA. Why not give her the same opportunity to,
because
grow the brand?
At the end of the day, you're not trying to grow Caitlin Clark's brand.
Yeah.
You're trying to grow USA basketball and you're trying to grow women's basketball. Like, one, again, my argument on that is this is not the place. This is the Olympic Games. This is the height and pinnacle of competition and something that these women have dreamed about since they were kids. And they didn't dream about it so they could be like, let's grow the game and do marketing. No, they want to win a gold medal and they want to kick other countries' ass or asses. Like, that is what the Olympic Games are about, competition. There's a marketing element, of course. Leave that to the marketing people. This is the sporting side. We don't do this for anybody else. Why are we trying to do it for Caitlin Clark / for women's basketball? If you're like, well, women's basketball needs to grow. It will. 6 Olympic matchups where the USA wins by 30 and Caitlin Clark plays 10 minutes are not going to be the difference in the success or failure of women's basketball. This is actually not that significant of an opportunity, in my opinion. So I think even if you take the marketing argument in good faith, it's actually a pretty weak argument. So that would be my main response is, okay, unlike a lot of people who are making that argument in bad faith, and David did a masterful job while his head nearly exploded of breaking this down around 5:30 today if you want to rewind in the Odyssey app. I think his answer started closer to 5:24. It was a full-on rant diatribe. I actually kind of hope it gets written up in some of the blogs. We'll take the attention. We'll do the marketing. That was an organic question to David Aldridge. If our people want to market it, go right ahead. But I think that's kind of the thing is like put the best team out there and they're going to be fun to watch. Like you get Chelsea Gray and Sabrina Ionescu throwing passes to Aja Wilson and, there's so many storylines in this team. I'll just do a couple off the top of my head. Like Nafisa Collier, one of the most underrated and unheralded players in the WNBA, having an MVP caliber season in Minnesota. Does she come out and star and it's like, whoa, who's this Nafisa Collier girl / woman? Like that's something that could come out of this. You have the super team crossovers, right? You have a couple of members of the New York Liberty. You have Stewie and Sabrina. You also have 4 members of the Las Vegas Aces. How do they get along and play nice in the sandbox for USA basketball? Considering they matched up in the finals last year. They're, I think, friendly off the court. Asia and Sabrina are in a CarMax commercial together. But, like, watching them play together is going to be fun. Getting some combination of Kelsey Plum, Jackie Young, Sabrina Ionescu in the backcourt with Stewie and Asia running. They could do an all Aces and Liberty team. Chelsea Gray, like, come on. There's so many great, fun storylines on this team. And people are going to like that. And I hope that NBC doesn't do the Caitlin Clark thing. I hope they focus on the people that are there because these women deserve it, just as any Olympian does. Sure, there might be some, if a 100-meter star who we talk about more once every 4 years than we do someone who has a season that most of us follow or a lot of people follow, like basketball does. Yeah, there might be a storyline there, a la like a Sha'Carri Richardson in Tokyo. But ultimately, like, you focus on the people that are there and the people that star, and that's how the Olympic Games work. We learn about new athletes, and stars are born in the Olympics all the time. Caitlin Clark doesn't need the Olympics. The Olympics doesn't need Caitlin Clark. You put the best team out there, the results are what they are, and we talk about it. Like, that's how the Olympics go. And by the way, like, it would be really fun to see Clark on this team because from a basketball standpoint, like, her get-ahead passing with Asia and Stewie running and Collier and Griner, like, we would have had Clark to Griner for a dunk at some point in this Olympics probably. Instead, it'll be Chelsea Gray to Brittany Griner. And, like, that's fine. That's fine. The conversation around this has gone off the rails in a way that actually produced one of the funniest series of tweets that I have ever received. It's about ESPN's First Take, and it genuinely makes me chuckle. And we're going to discuss it next on the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Anthony, I had a tweet this morning about First Take's take on the Caitlin Clark situation that went, as the kids say, viral. Ooh. I was also lucky because I had... Sometimes on the internet, people are terrible, and like it's actually not very fun to be on Twitter or YouTube or whatever. And what I've learned is sometimes you can control that by moderating your own content, aka turning replies off or moderating them. And people get really mad at that, but it's honestly just better for your own sanity. And I did that for another Clark adjacent tweet over the weekend because people are insufferable about some aspects of her, which is no fault of her own. And I forgot to change the settings back, and I feel like I lucked out on that. Because I haven't, my replies have been going, or my notifications have been going nonstop on Twitter, but they haven't been terrible. There have been some that are quite funny though. And those, there's one that I have to pull out for just special recognition first. And then we'll get into the actual first takeness of it all, which I found enlightening and funny all at once. The one that was outrageous, that was so funny to me, comes from a Team 980 listener. That listener's name is Jay. And Jay quote tweeted me. So I said, Shannon Sharp said this about Caitlin Clark. I'm just going to read it. I'm not going to play it. Are we really trying to grow the game? Because this is the most popular women's basketball player in the world and it ain't close. So are we really trying to grow the game? Is that what we're really trying to do? Are we just talking about we're going to grow the game and then just bull jive it? And I quote tweeted that from Awful Announcing saying, the inability for First Take and others, but they are amongst the worst offenders, to just treat women's basketball like a sport is the problem. Something that I've talked about on this show a lot. If we just treat the sport like a sport, it'll grow like a sport, and it will be treated in the discourse of us all like a sport. But instead, we do this stupid thing where everything's about marketing and about money and about the existential existence of women's sports, and it's actually not helpful to growing it. So if you care about growing it, what you should do is do the things that you need to grow it instead of debating on whether or not things that are happening are growing it. So I said, you want to grow the game? Talk about the game. Don't debate its popularity. Get informed. Talk about it. That's your job. And Jay, Anthony, quote tweeted me with my resume and this radio show saying, I listen to 980 daily. How often are you doing non-Clark WNBA segments, Craig? I'm sorry. You listen daily to this show? And you ask that question? Jay, I think you need to listen to some different times, my guy. Did you miss the entire show Thursday and Friday where we were live at Capital One Arena and spent much of the show talking about not Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark visiting? No, we actually talked about the Mystics. And I try to squeeze Mystics in whenever we can. You're talking to the guy that was at Mystics Media Day, doing a show just on the internet. And we aired some of those interviews that we recorded on our digital show here on the radio. I just thought of all people in the DC media mainstream, sphere that Jay could tweet that at. I found that directed at me, someone who just started a second YouTube page just for his women's sports content to try to make it so that people that are following me for Commanders can get their Commanders uninterrupted, because they don't even want NBA stuff. They don't want Major League. They just want their Commanders. So my main YouTube page is that, and then the W page has grown. It's got at this point I haven't checked in the last couple of hours, but we're nearing 200 subscribers in less than a month. So I think you're barking up the wrong tree.
You know what they call that?
What do they call that?
Ignorance.
Playing yourself.
Yes.
Like, dog, what? There's people screaming at the radio right now being like, I wish you talked about it less. And I'm like, I know. Stop screaming at me. But the first take thing I actually thought was interesting and kind of funny was the quote-unquote defense of First Take, which some people did. Like, when I say quote-unquote defense, that'll make sense in a minute. You have tweets like this one from Seawood881. First Take is exactly the type of show that would argue that Deion Sanders should coach the college football Olympians over Nick Saban. So I don't know what you're talking about. Big Memphis naysayer. The problem is First Take is the absolute crappiest platform to grow anything on. Debate-style content is more of a hindrance to growth than anything, and it's time for us to all realize that. It's only quote-unquote good from a numbers views perspective, but it doesn't grow, support anything. First Take been on for what, like 15, 20 years now? I'll blame y'all for still watching before I blame them for doing what they have done incessantly from the first day Stephen A. and Skip quote-unquote debated. Same people are complaining and not giving hardcore WNBA pregame podcasts these numbers. Get informed. A serious skill issue for Stephen A. NWG. Was there a period of time I missed where this Stephen A. Smith idiot and TNT basketball shows became the crux of civil discourse? And then I think this is summed up most succinctly by Ralph at Saints Forecast, who says, First Take barely talks about the actual basketball of the NBA. And you want to know what? To all of those people, good point. Well said. And this is the problem, though, is I don't watch First Take. It gets thrown at me when I am either turning on ESPN because I was watching a game the night before, or like I'm at my barbershop and it's on TV, and sometimes I'll kind of read the closed captioning and be like, what are these folks doing? Or obviously it's clipped up and passed around on social media. But realistically, the reason First Take exists and is given the power that it does is because people do watch it. Now, I am someone who will watch the Ion pregame show for the W Friday night game, and many of the people who are tweeting in that thread are the same, and they will do that, and they're not watching First Take. And that's fine, but I think it's like an understanding the argument, and also to get to the next layer/level here, we have to understand that millions of people do watch First Take. And I'm not just talking about shows like First Take. I'm talking about specifically First Take. And here's where we get to the actual serious part of it. Here's where we get past the funny ha-has and people clowning First Take for being exactly what it is. My point is grading First Take on what First Take asks to be graded on. First Take claims to be a serious show. They claim to do actual high thinking. Stephen A. gets really upset if you're like, you don't know what you're talking about. And now Shannon and Stephen A. both have talked about growing the women's game. And this gets to the absolute heart of what Monica McNutt said to Stephen A. that set him off last week. If you want the responsibility of being a platform that grows things, then treat it seriously. Because the reality is they don't want the responsibility. It's too much for them. They want the credit. They want to be able to say, look what we did. Well, if you want to do that, then do it. If you want to do it, if you want to actually grow the women's game, then show up every day in a different jersey. Stephen A. could buy a different W jersey for every day of the week and start the show by saying, this is Nafisha Collier's jersey. She's currently averaging 20 whatever points she is. She's a stud. I've been watching her. I've been making sure I catch all her games this week. You should watch her too. And guess what? As crazy as it sounds to those of us that don't watch First Take, people would. If you want to be an activist journalist and you want to grow the game, then do it. Quit asking for credit and quit asking about other people doing it if you don't want that responsibility. If you want to be a thermostat, be a thermostat. Set the temperature. If you want to just be a thermometer and react to what everyone else is doing, then stop asking these questions. Just sit there and do that and quit looking for credit for doing something that you're not remotely putting in the work for. That's what irritates the hell out of me. And that's why, as fun as it is to clown First Take, because this is actually what they do with every sport, it's simply me grading them on their scale. And the grade is an F. I think I did that backwards for the camera. It's an F. I don't know. Things are getting reversed. People on the radio. I tried to make an F with my finger, and it didn't work.
It's delayed over here, so I can't even, give you feedback.
Yeah, no, I also failed at that, but that's not very significant. I didn't land the plane like I should have. I should have just said it. It would have been a nice. And the grade is an F.
Yeah, it was definitely backwards.
Yeah. Whoops. The Hoffman Show. Walking backwards into the end at 7 o'clock. Tonight, by the way, the Mystics are off, but tomorrow night you'll have Mystics basketball 7:30 here on the Team 980 against the Dream. The Fever are actually in action. Clark is playing tonight, so you got that is the only W game on the schedule. No NBA Finals until Wednesday. A couple more loose ends to tie up from the weekend, and then we're out of here with real things next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. We got a couple things for real things, but I want to try to do weekend wrap up real quick. And one thing, talking about the growth of women's sports and marketing and stuff all day. Here's how you do it. Did you catch what Chicago did this weekend in the NWSL?
Chicago, no.
So the Chicago Red Stars hosted the first ever women's soccer game at Wrigley Field. Instead of playing at their usual stadium in suburban Chicago, they played at Wrigley Field. They lost to Bay FC 2-0, I believe was the final score. And it was the largest crowd in NWSL history. It was very cool. They did a fantastic job of recreating like an actual soccer field. Like there's a long history of soccer fields being put on baseball fields and it going terribly. This was not the case. They actually did a good job, and the images and like the overhead shots and everything, it was sick, and it was the biggest crowd in the history of the league. So good job, Chicago Red Stars and Bay FC, setting a new attendance record this weekend. By the way, Spirit this weekend hosting Alex Morgan, Jaden Shaw, Naomi Girma, and San Diego Wave. 7:30 Saturday night at Audi. That is going to be one of the biggest crowds of the season. It might be a sellout, actually, Saturday night at Audi. Also, the Spirit announced today they are doing a ridiculous 2-weekend stretch in August. So coming out of the Olympic break, they are going to play a friendly against Arsenal, who is obviously one of the best teams in the world, not only on the men's side, but on the women's side. And then the following weekend, Arsenal and Chelsea are going to play each other as a tune-up game for their season before they go back to England as part of a doubleheader. So the Spirit are going to play Kansas City, and then immediately after, Chelsea and Arsenal are going to play at Audi Field. That's going to be insane.
When is this?
August, I think 11th and 18th. It's August 14th and 21st, I believe, are the 2 dates.
Are you going to be here?
I will be back from Paris, and I will very much be there.
I think I'll be there as well.
I'm so pumped for this. Like incredible soccer down the street, across Capitol Street here in the southern tip of D.C. So that's cool. If you wanted to see crappy soccer, you could have gone to Commander's Field on Saturday. U.S. men got crushed by Colombia 5-1. Gross. Absolutely disgusting. What else was in our weekend in review?
We had that.
Max Verstappen won again. That race was nuts in Canada.
Oh, and Jaden Daniels threw out his first
pitch.
pitch.
Yeah. It was like there's something else. So Jaden Daniels threw out a first pitch. It wasn't great. Throwing a football and throwing a baseball are very different things, though.
Is it really that hard, though, man, to throw
the
ball
hard?
To the catcher?
Is it that hard? No. Absolutely not.
Is it nerves?
I think it's nerves. I think also guys if you're throwing from the mound, throwing downhill, it's definitely different. If you had, I know we talked about this last week. We got to get us to be able to throw a first pitch. First of all, would you do it from the mound?
Yes.
Okay.
Where else would I do it from?
In front of the mound. A lot of people throw it from in front of the mound.
In front of the mound.
Yeah, they shorten it down. A lot of people that throw first pitches are not there because they're good athletes.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I'm chucking it from the mound.
Well, yeah. So that's my next question is, are you trying to like drill a fastball in there? Are you trying to like really pepper it? Because I'll tell you right now, I'm not throwing my arm out. I haven't thrown a baseball in a long time at this point. But I also I'm throwing it with enough lob that I don't bounce it. But I'm also throwing it hard enough that it looks like I'm not trying to lob it. But I'm not throwing it hard enough that afterwards I'm turning around to check the radar gun.
Yeah, me personally, I think beforehand I would definitely be determined to, throw a strike, 70, 80, 90 miles per hour. But when
how hard do you think you could? This is actually an ongoing. This 10 years ago. God, it really was 10 years ago. This was an ongoing bit on the ESPN Dallas radio show that I worked on. One of the shows that I worked on was how hard could you throw a baseball? And the guys bet me that I couldn't throw 80. We never actually got a radar gun out. I don't know that I could throw 80 right now because I haven't thrown a baseball in a long time. Also, by the way, Anthony, what's our out time?
55-50.
Okay, so we have a minute left. if you gave me like 3 months to get my arm back in shape, I think I could probably muster 80. But I'm not putting in that kind of work. I'm not throwing every day. I don't have someone to play catch with, etc. But how hard do you think you could throw a baseball?
I don't think I can throw 80. I was just, talking trash. But maybe like 70, maybe 60. I feel
like you're in the 60s.
Okay. Well, we have the equipment at prep, so I'm going to put it to the test.
Okay.
I'll figure this out.
I'm gonna have to come up there.
Okay.
Like, I'm not gonna throw hard, but like if I just give it a nice, like, get my legs into it, what happens?
We gotta do
what
that.
I want to know.
And the 40.
Yeah, that I'm more likely to run. All right. Well, those experiments and more tomorrow.